Hi there, this is Ray. I spent a lot of time in the past in Vietnam, and I've been looking back at some of the notes I made about my long years in Vietnam, and I've decided to publish some of these stories about what I noticed in Vietnam at the time I was there. So let's begin with the very first one today. We'll call this session the exploding Poo Fish. Out in the country in Vietnam, plumbing can be scarce, especially in the villages, and sewerage is mostly disposed of at the village level. A lot of villages have what may be called a communal toilet, where a tree trunk is placed across a pond and a small privacy shelter built. The user walks out onto the tree trunk and positions himself or herself inside the privacy shelter and does what is required, the result falling into the pond. Over the past few years, having taken note from nature, many villages have started stocking their ponds with the black and white catfish, who finds the results of human visits over his home to be irresistibly delicious, and they wait eagerly, mouths open, when they spy a human climbing out over their pond. Great, you say. Recycling at its best. Humans dispose of their waste, and the fish gets a top feed. Of course, the next step in the process is that the fish eventually get rounded up and eaten. Now that really is recycling. However, that is not where the story ends. The Vietnamese black and white catfish is a reasonably large fish, and there's a lot of flesh on him. Enter the smart people who decide to make the perfect export opportunity. Let's face it, he's cheap to feed and produces a lot of flesh. So an export contract is secured with Australia for supply of this delicacy to restaurant trade. Sometime later, Australia halts the trade. I bet you thought it was because of his diet. Oh no, it's because of the way in which he is caught. The villagers decide that waiting to catch these creatures by line and hook is too slow, and the demand for this meat from Australia is increasing fast. So what do? They use dynamite to blast the catfish out of his little piece of heaven and pick up the bits from the pond as they float about amidst whatever else is floating about at the time. The trade is soon to be resumed, as the villagers have discovered that they can just as easily poison the catfish. Enjoy your next meal. Be looking forward to seeing and hearing the next podcast about my time in Vietnam.